Hey everyone, I'm Jason, and this is your commentary on Leviticus chapter 13. Now, I could really use your help today. I am a preacher and a theologian, but this particular chapter and the next, Leviticus chapter 14, read more like a medical textbook. So anyone out there who is a nurse or a doctor, has any medical training, or if you know someone who has medical training, please watch the video and feel free to put in the comments your thoughts on what it's talking about here. We'd also love to see you over in the link on the Patreon page. It's just $1 a month, gives you access to all of my notes, a summary, an advanced notice of every single chapter before it comes out. You also get access to our Discord server where we go more in depth on all of these topics. It's there in the Discord server that I'm going to put up another link specifically to what we're talking about today. Leviticus chapter 13 is broken down into two main sections. The first part talks about skin diseases, like leprosy. The second part talks about mold. So God's going to give us rules for how to identify these two different things, skin diseases and mold. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. He told them to say to the people, "Suppose someone's skin has a swelling or a rash or a shiny spot, and suppose it could become a skin disease. Then they must be brought to the priest Aaron, or they must be brought to a priest in Aaron's family line. The priest must look carefully at the sore on the person's skin. He must see whether the hair in the sore has turned white. He must also see whether the sore seems to be under the skin. If the sore is white and is under the skin, it is a skin disease. When the priest looks the person over carefully, he must announce that the person is unclean. Suppose the shiny spot on the skin is white, but does not seem to be under the skin. And suppose the hair in the spot has not turned white. Then the priest must make the person stay away from everyone else for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must look carefully at the sore again. Suppose it has not changed and has not spread in the skin. Then the priest must make the person stay away from everyone else for another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest must look carefully at the sore again. If it has faded and is not spread, he must announce that the person is clean. It is only a rash. That person must wash their clothes. They will be clean. But suppose the rash spreads in the skin after they have shown themselves to the priest a second time. They must appear in front of the priest again. The priest must look carefully at the sore. If the rash has spread, he must announce that the person is unclean. They have a skin disease. When anyone has a skin disease, they must be brought to the priest. The priest must look them over carefully. Suppose there is a white swelling in the skin. Suppose it has turned the hair white, and suppose there are open sores in the swelling. Then the person has a skin disease that will never go away. The priest must announce that they are unclean. The priest must not make them stay away from everyone else. They are already unclean. Suppose the disease breaks out all over their skin, and suppose it covers them from head to foot, as far as the priest can tell. Then the priest must look them over carefully. If the disease has covered their whole body, the priest must announce that they are clean. All their skin has turned white, so they are clean. But when open sores appear on their skin, they will not be clean. When the priest sees the open sores, he must announce that they are unclean. The open sores are not clean. They have a skin disease. But if the open sores change and turn white, they must go to the priest. The priest must look them over carefully. If the sores have turned white, the priest must announce that the person is clean. Then they will be clean. Suppose someone has a boil on their skin and it heals. And suppose a white swelling or shiny pink spot appears where the boil was. Then they must show themselves to the priest. The priest must look at the boil carefully. Suppose it seems to be under the skin, and suppose the hair in it has turned white. Then the priest must announce that the person is unclean. A skin disease has broken out where the boil was. But suppose that when the priest looks at the boil carefully, there is no white hair in it. The boil is not under the skin, and it has faded. then the priest must make the person stay away from everyone else for 7 days. If the boil is spreading in the skin, the priest must announce that the person is unclean. They have a skin disease. But suppose the spot has not changed, and suppose it has not spread. Then it is only a scar from the boil, and the priest must announce that the person is clean. Suppose someone has a burn on their skin, and suppose a white or shiny pink spot shows up in the open sores of the burn. Then the priest must look at the spot carefully. Suppose the hair in it has turned white, and suppose the spot seems to be under the skin. Then the person has a skin disease. It is broken out where they were burned. The priest must announce that the person is unclean. They have a skin disease. But suppose the priest looks at the spot carefully. Suppose there is no white hair in it. Suppose the spot is not under the skin, and suppose it has faded. Then the priest must make the person stay away from everyone else for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must look them over carefully. If the spot is spreading in the skin, the priest must announce that the person is unclean. They have a skin disease. But suppose the spot has not changed. It is not spread in the skin, and it has faded. Then the burn has caused it to swell. The priest must announce that the person is clean. It is only a scar from the burn. Suppose a man or woman has a sore on their head or chin. Then the priest must look at the sore carefully. Suppose it seems to be under the skin, and suppose the hair in the sore is yellow and thin. Then the priest must announce that the person is unclean. The sore is a skin disease on the head or chin. But suppose the priest looks carefully at the sore. It does not seem to be under the skin, and there is no black hair in it. Then the priest must make the person stay away from everyone else for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must look at the sore carefully. Suppose it is not spread in the skin. It does not have any yellow hair in it, and it does not seem to be under the skin. Then the man or woman must shave their head, but they must not shave the area where the disease is, and the priest must make them stay away from everyone else for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must look at the sore carefully. Suppose it is not spread in the skin, and suppose it does not seem to be under the skin. Then the priest must announce that the person is clean. They must wash their clothes. They will be clean. But suppose the sore spreads in the skin after the priest announces that the person is clean. Then the priest must look them over carefully. Suppose the sore has spread. Then the priest does not have to look for yellow hair. The person is unclean. But suppose the sore has stopped and black hair has grown there, as far as the priest can tell. Then the person is healed and is clean. The priest must announce that they are clean. Suppose a man or woman has white spots on the skin. Then the priest must look at them carefully. Suppose he sees the spots are dull white. Then a harmless rash has broken out on the skin. That person is clean. Suppose a man loses all the hair on his head. Then he is clean. Suppose he loses only the hair on the front of his head. Then he is clean. But suppose he has a shiny pink sore on his head where his hair was. Then he has a skin disease. It is breaking out on his whole head or on the front of his head. The priest must look him over carefully. Suppose the swollen sore on his head or on the front of it is pink and shiny, and suppose it looks like a skin disease. Then he has a skin disease. He is unclean. The priest must announce that the man is unclean. That's because he has a sore on his head. Suppose someone has a skin disease that makes them unclean. Then they must wear torn clothes. They must let their hair hang loose. They must cover the lower part of their face. They must cry out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as they have the disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. God is giving us rules for contagious diseases. He's helping us to identify when something is contagious and when it's not. We also see something familiar here with the covering of the mouth and letting people know that you're unclean, so that way they can stay away from you and you would stay away from them. It was their version of social distancing. I would love to hear from anyone in the medical profession who understands the difference when he says someone is clean versus when they're unclean. And even when they're unclean, sometimes he says, stay away from people, and other times he says that they're allowed to be near people. I'm assuming that this is because sometimes we can have an autoimmune deficiency, something along the lines, that's not contagious. We're still sick, but no one else is going to get it. But other times, other people may get it. Also, when he says that people are clean, but they have something like a rash or just baldness, any number of things, the person isn't sick, their body's just responding to something. But they're not labeled as being unclean. So any medical professional out there who might be able to give us insight into these different types of diseases, please let us know in the comments below. Suppose some clothes have mold on them. The clothes could be made out of wool or linen, or there could be cloth woven or knitted out of linen or wool. There could be pieces of leather, or there could be things that are made out of leather. And suppose the mold on the clothes or on the woven or knitted cloth looks green or red. Or suppose the green or red mold is on the pieces of leather or the leather goods. Then it is mold that spreads. It must be shown to the priest. The priest must look at it carefully. He must keep the thing with the mold on it away from everything else for 7 days. On the 7th day, he must look at it carefully. Suppose the mold has spread in the clothes, or in the woven or knitted cloth, or suppose it has spread on the pieces of leather, or on the leather goods. Then it is mold that destroys. The thing is unclean. The priest must burn everything with the mold in it. He must burn the clothes, or the woven or knitted cloth, made out of wool or linen. He must burn the leather goods. The mold destroys, so everything must be burned. But suppose the priest looks at the thing carefully. The mold has not spread in the clothes, and it has not spread in the woven or knitted cloth or in the leather goods. Then he will order someone to wash the thing with the mold on it. After that, the priest must keep the thing away from everything else for another 7 days. After the thing with the mold on it has been washed, the priest must look at it again carefully. Suppose the way the mold looks has not changed. Then even though the mold has not spread, it is unclean. Burn it. It does not matter which side of the thing the mold is on. But suppose the priest looks at it carefully, and suppose the mold has faded after the thing has been washed. Then the priest must tear out the part with mold on it. He must tear it out of the clothes or leather. He must tear it out of the woven or knitted cloth. But suppose it shows up again in the clothes, or suppose it shows up again in the woven or knitted cloth or in the leather goods. Then it is spreading. Everything with the mold on it must be burned. The clothes that have been washed and do not have any more mold on them must be washed again. So must the woven or knitted cloth or the leather goods. Then they will be clean. These are the rules about what to do with anything with mold on it. They apply to clothes that are made out of wool or linen. They apply to woven and knitted cloth and to leather goods. They give a priest directions about when to announce whether something is clean or unclean. In this section, we see God telling us rules about how to deal with mold. I've said it before, the Bible is all about Jesus. That being said, it talks to real people at real points in time about real concerns. Moses led millions of Israelites out of Egypt. With that large of a group moving together, issues like fungal infection and skin diseases were real concerns. Why is it so important to spend so many chapters talking about keeping things clean? Because God cares about our health and well-being. We are real people with real concerns. It would be easy to dismiss the Bible as some mystical fantasy book that's not relevant to your daily life. But here we see that God's not only interested in our spirituality, but in our physical well-being as well. Well, that's it for our commentary on Leviticus chapter 13. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.